Hello, I'm Gavin, and I'll piggyback. Yesterday was bitterness and jealousy, and Matthew, Dust to Dust, made a point which was helpful for me. It helped me remember that bitterness is a poison, like alcohol, and that it can even be lethal. But even alcohol has its place, it has its utility, its use. So just be careful. Um, so at the top of my list is this no God. You might notice that there's a dash. That's kind of in memory of a Jewish tradition where we don't want to confuse the symbol for uh, the actual. And so it's good to remember. It's good to remember uh, that these are representations, and they aren't the real thing. But in knowing God, uh, it occurs to me that knowing the self can help in knowing God. And so, knowing the self, we have to go deep. If we stay superficial, and if we ignore our heart, and if we try to do it by ourselves and without others, others who love us and who we love, then it can be difficult to know the self, to know our own heart. And so the path to knowing God's heart, for me, it seems also includes knowing my own heart. So hopefully I can kind of prove this out. Um, and then I list out be the change we want to see, and I'll list out some bullets. And I'm going to skip over to, I'm going to stay high first. So at a high level, there's a no God, be the change we want to see, the familiar person, and the unfamiliar person. And so the unfamiliar person is what can be the source of a bitterness, jealousy, is rooted in a fear, and it can be a fear based in knowledge of ourself, and maybe even a subconscious knowing of ourself. And so, I came into the Bridges of Meaning Discord server, and I was an unfamiliar person, and I started, telling, basically suggesting that they were making mistakes, and that I was suggesting the way which would be better. And that was a bit scary. And it's because an unfamiliar person who has habits and practices that are very different and strange is like an alien. And then I got kicked out of the Bridges of Meaning Discord server. So we have a fear about the unfamiliar person. And the practice, what do we do about this? Well, the practice is lead and heal by confessing our shortcomings and being vulnerable and building trust. And so, my shortcoming, when I joined the Bridges of Meaning Discord server, was that I had no care for these other people. And if I had care for these other people, I would then consider how they perceive me. And I may consider that, I'm an alien to them. Right? And so instead of just being familiar with myself and knowing that I'm trustworthy and honest, and I equated trustworthiness with honesty, and having skill at accomplishing goals and whatnot, being productive, being helpful in my works. I just came in and kind of assumed that I ignored the people and had no care for the fact that I was an alien, and I could be quite scary to anyone who had never encountered or known a person like me. And so in hindsight, I was a scary person, and kicking me out of Discord server is, I can understand the fear for why that would happen. And so I think the way we get around that is by confessing our shortcomings. So when I came into a space and acted like someone who was great and was the teacher, and I wasn't playing student, and I wasn't trying to play the game that other people were playing. I was coming in with my game, thinking my game was most important, and just started playing my own game and ignored anything else that was going on. And so there are practices which help in leading and healing and earning trust and building trust. There's practices I don't even know about yet. The one I knew about at that time when I got kicked out of Bridges of Meaning was that if I'm allowed to do work, you will see that I am trustworthy because I'm actually good at what I do. I care about what I do. I care about the people that are impacted by the work I do. And my work is like technical in nature. And so that was the practice I knew about in building trust, because that's what I had done in my career. But there's another practice in building trust, and this is the confessing of what we're not good at. And so maybe you can catch in there the practice itself. And the hope would be that somehow other people who are unfamiliar, who are like aliens, will be encouraged and inspired to do their own confessions such that they can earn trust and build trust. So that's the unfamiliar person. That's what to do with this bitterness and jealousy. It's kind of a gift. I see it as a gift. Now, the familiar person. So we feel disappointed because we are helpful and ignored. And so this is another source of a bitterness and jealousy. And I know there are people like me. And what do you do about it? Well, we could go around complaining, and we could criticize others who aren't treating us the way we want to be treated. Or we can practice treating others the way we want to be treated. And what came to mind here is like, God is a familiar person. Like God, the thought is that God is disappointed because God is helpful and God is ignored. And so I love this idea that the disappointment we might feel might be the same disappointment that God might feel. So we can practice remembering God, who is a familiar person like us. And then we can practice inviting the familiar person, God and our neighbor. And so like a familiar person, the familiar people, there's just so many of you. Like, how many of you have felt disappointed because you are a helpful person, you know your own worth, and you're ignored, while somehow other people receive attention? I could keep going very deep. These other people that receive attention, like there's a lot of practice, and we can practice praying that the attention being given and received in a way which might be disappointing would turn out for the good, and have the faith that it can. Like, I can see it. Those people, the ideas which are receiving the most attention, when I say that, it's like, how could you know what I mean? Unless you're like my very good friend. For all you know, I'm talking about the President of the United States. For all you know, I might be talking about a war, an international war. For all you know, I might be talking about race relationships. Or I might be talking about, anything and everything in the attention economy. And so the practice here that I would just maybe add, prayer and faith. Prayer and faith. To name it explicitly is difficult sometimes. Prayer and faith in all things, in all. It is all, we can give thanks for all. We can have faith in all, because it can all be used for the good, even when we feel disappointed. That's how great God is. It can all glorify God, even the things which make us feel disappointed. That's how great God is. And so, yeah, if you're a familiar person who feels these things, I think, I feel that I'm of worth and helpful, and I feel that all people are of worth and are helpful, and I don't think it's fair that some people receive so much more attention than other people. And so what do? We can invite the familiar person. So it's I could go out and reach out to others. You leave a comment. Maybe we can connect in a more meaningful way. Maybe I can mention a few people whenever I make this video public. If you're someone that comes to mind where this message it feels like this message may be relevant. And then the other one here is I could put it, recommend the familiar person and become the familiar person. So this is the summary up here, is be the change we want to see, is leadership. This is like a gentle teacher healer. So a good leader is a gentle teacher healer, so gentle that the student and the patient doesn't even know. That's how gentle. This is God. God can be that gentle. And then the invite the familiar person is lead by example. Recommend the familiar person, lead by example, and become the familiar person. And so, there are people who are of worth and who are valuable, who are, I would say, most familiar to me. There are people who are of worth and valuable who are unfamiliar to me. And there are some who are more or less familiar to me. And there are these practices we can do. And that includes becoming the familiar person, inviting the familiar person, and recommending the familiar person. I mean, that's all that's happening when we have a fear about the unfamiliar person and when we feel disappointed because we are helpful and ignored. What's really happening is that we are not becoming, we're not being the change we want. We aren't taking on that personal responsibility. And we can do this. You can do this. You can, if you have these feelings, you can become a gentle teacher healer who invites the familiar person and recommends the familiar person and becomes the familiar person, through practices. So, I love you, you familiar and unfamiliar people. I have a hope and a faith. It's not too naive. I know there are real concerns about enemies. But then there's also a faith that even our enemies can be transformed, and then that it can all be for the good, and especially as we become the change we want to see. All right. Y'all have a good day.